Hey, it's the podcast guy.
Sutton United Talk Time on podcast. It's the Sutton Podcast.
And there it is! Sutton United at the GM Vauxhall Conference have put our First Division Coventry City winners of the FA Cup themselves less than 2 years ago. And what a moment to enjoy for the fans of this Surrey side. They've had their moments before, but never one like this.
But the whistle goes down. Delight for Sutton United. Sutton United from the National League are through to the last 16 of the FA Cup. No longer English football's perennial non-league club. A 123-year crescendo reaches a new peak for Sutton United, who are promoted to the Football League for the first time.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Sutton United Talk Time on podcast, sponsored by Lucky Star Gin. I say another episode, but this isn't just a regular episode. This is the bonus edition, and I'm delighted to say that I'm being joined today by Dave Farebrother. How are you, Dave? How are you?
Hello, Mike. Good evening. I'm fine, thank you.
Lovely. What we're doing is obviously October's Black History Month, and I've done some videos with some of our ex-players, and I just thought we'd do a little intro into why we're doing this, and just asking your sort of thoughts, because you are the and I've struggled saying this all the way through, inclusivity, diversity and equality manager. No, so I've done it the wrong way around. It's quality, diversity and inclusivity. So what does that entail?
Yeah, to be fair, I'm only one of a committee on EDI, so I'm not actually the lead. I'm the lead on environment, but I'm one of the committee in the club that looks at these issues. And yeah, it's Black History Month, and we wanted to acknowledge the enormous contribution that some of the players of Black heritage have made to this football club, particularly in terms of the men's first team, since the very first player with a Black heritage, Gavin Fraser, played for the club in the early 1970s, all the way through to now, when of course we have a fully integrated and successful team. I hope it will be successful again very soon, but yeah.
The time of recording, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, I have to say, the thought of you and I sitting talking about Black History Month did tickle me slightly, as there's nothing like two white guys sitting around talking about Black History Month. But and I was feeling quite awkward on a couple of the interviews, and you may well hear it when talking to them. But I realised very quickly that Black History Month isn't just for Black people celebrating their history, because as I was told, most Black people have history. So it was for me to learn their history, and there was quite a lot in there. There was quite a lot of memories. I was kind of like, I wish I didn't remember that happening. But what does Black History Month mean to you?
I mean, without getting too political about it and focusing on the football side, I think it's about that we shouldn't care whether the player is black, pink, brown, yellow, white, or whatever. They're footballers. And we should treat everybody, whether on the football pitch, whether they're in the stands or on the terraces, or whether they're in the high street, at work, or at society in general, exactly the same. And I've been lucky in my life. I've had a few lovely holidays abroad. And the more you travel, the more you notice that people are the same everywhere. They want the same things. They think the same things. They're afraid of the same things. And it doesn't matter what they look like. So I think if you relate that to football, if the ball goes into the back of net from a Sutton United player, I don't think the first thing anybody asks is what colour's the player who scored. It's we've scored a goal. And I think that's the way it should be. We shouldn't even be interested about what the background is. But it is Black History Month because obviously there is still an education program going on nationally and internationally along these lines. And we just wanted to mark in some way the contribution that players of Black heritage have made to the fortunes of the club. So one of the things that we're doing is a couple of pieces on the website. They would have gone up over the last 4 or 5 days to look at some of the players, only a few. We haven't looked at every single one. That would have been a mammoth task. But to look at some of the players who've made a significant contribution and are well known to the fans. So people like Lennie, of course, Lennie Dennis, who scored so many goals for the club. People like Efan Okoku, who went on to represent his country at the World Cup. You know, for a little non-league side like we were at the time. Well, what an achievement that was. So I know you've spoken to some of these players as well. We often speak to a lot of them, and we've got a WhatsApp group that many of them are in, and we share reminiscences and chats and jokes. So I just thought it'd be nice to introduce some of our newer supporters to the contribution of some of the players from the past, as well as the ones we have with us now.
Absolutely, and some of the stories were great, fascinating. There was a theme running all the way through them, and Sutton United came out very well on that theme, because even back in the olden days where things were rife, it was never like that at Sutton. It was always elsewhere, but never like that at Sutton. So it was really nice to hear. And I've actually pinned a couple of them down to another extended interview about their playing time as well. So yes, there's a few of the players that you mentioned. We've got a nice range of players from the mid-late 80s all the way through to first team now. So I will let those interviews go out, and please do tell me what you think. As I said, it was an interesting time for me to listen to the stories and talk to these players, and I really, really hope I've done it justice. So please enjoy. Thank you. What does Black History Month mean to you?
Well, personally, Black History Month touches on me when I think of the struggle that not just my parents went through when they first came here, but other people from the Caribbean went through when they first came over here. My parents came over in 56. My dad came first for a year, and then my mum came back 2 years after, and my brother was born in 58. 58. And it just always told me about the struggle that they had when they first came over. They were invited on the Windrush. Have you heard of the Windrush ship? That they weren't on the actual Windrush, but they were similar boats on the Windrush, and they came over on a similar voyage. And you can imagine it took them ages. But not only that, Dad said when he first came, you looked for somewhere to live, and it would say no blacks, no Irish, no dogs. And when he first told me that, I started laughing, and he was like, "Why are you laughing?" And I said, "Are you serious?" And he went, "Yeah, that was the situation." So for them both to have gone from that to then they settled. I was born, my brother Mike was born, and then they went back to retire in Jamaica, which was their goal to do in the end, to come, to come here. My mum was a nurse, my dad painter and decorator, to try and do well here, put some money aside and go back, which is what they did. And so they were probably one success there. But a lot of people don't realise, because, when I was smaller, you get Enoch Powell groups going all over the place. And we used to go out away from Lewisham for the day. When there was a march, it would be like an NF march, and we used to go out for the day. But people don't realise what kind of effect that would have on kids when you were younger, when you were worried where to go and stuff. So the struggle that a lot of families had then, it's good if the younger generation now know what they went, what the earlier generation went through, so they could have a better time now. It's like, I think that's why my favourite player was always Cyril Regis, because I remember watching him on TV when I was younger, playing for West Brom, and the abuse I could hear coming from the stand. I can remember saying to my dad, "I don't think I'm going to carry on playing football." The abuse that this guy's taking, and he went, "No, that means you just got to do better against them. That's all," like that. And but I think now, saying my children, my child's generation, I don't think they always appreciate what happened a couple of generations back, even when I was playing, compared to when some of the players are playing now. If one person would be racist in the stand or something like that, it's a big thing now, and rightly so. When I was playing, I can remember when we went to Middlesbrough to play the second game, the replay from in '88, I think it was. You know, they had one whole stand behind them, sort of being really abusive to myself and Edgar Owaratifi, who were playing. Nothing was done about it. But back in those days, nothing would be done about it. Only your coach would say, go and score. You know, I was lucky that I'm not the type of person I'm not a shrinking violet, and I was able to just carry on. But I did know a couple of players who they did pack up when they got to 16, 17, who were really good players because of that. So Black History Month, really going back to what you're saying before I ramble on, Black History Month was really just reminds me of the struggle that a lot of people went through when they first came to this country.
For me, it's a weird one because Black history is every day. It's an everyday occurrence. So it being highlighted just 1 month of the year seems pretty weird to me. But it's been highlighted, so you've got to take the positives out of it. And, you know, as I said, as it's been highlighted, it then obviously reaches other people, other formats. People are a bit more interested in it, maybe, I don't know. But as I said, to me, being Black, obviously having my mum and my dad coming from the Caribbean and moving to England, where I was born, we had to go through some tough times. So, and a lot of that had to do with race, you know, colour, etc., and trying to blend into society and into the surroundings, really. So, yeah, I don't think of like colour or being Black as an everyday sort of thought process. I just am what I am, and I just sort of go through life and every day that way, you know. If someone asks me a question, as you just done then, obviously it makes me think about it a little bit more. It brings it to the fore a little bit more. But really, yeah, as I said, I'm happy that it is highlighted. But yeah, it's something that I go through every day. So it's, you know, it is every day for me. And that's what I think of Black history, you know, creating history and seeing so many diverse things happening now, which is really, really good.
I think it's a time to be able to reflect on what's happened over the years, being a Black person really, and the history and what's gone on. I guess as I've grown up, I've got to know a little bit more about Black history and the work. I've obviously got my family that taught me along the way, but we just touched on a little bit of school. So I just think for me personally, it's a chance to remember, reflect, and look at the positives that are now happening in life around Black history.
So I would say Black History Month, what it means to me. So I guess it's a celebration of life of Black people. Obviously going back throughout the years of slavery and things like that, and what we've overcome throughout the years. I guess just the acknowledgement and the celebration of what the people before us today have accomplished and done for us to live happily throughout our lives. Although there still are some things, some flawed and some, I don't know, racism that still goes on today in today's age. But fundamentally, I think it's a celebration of what people before us have done to help give us a better life.
Have you, whilst you were playing, since you've been playing, had the opportunity to mentor any other young Black players? And what advice would you or did you give to them?
Yeah, well, I've been coaching a lot of black players, male and female, and they don't realise. So what I've done is that I've said to them, when you go home, tap in Cyril Regis and watch some videos of when he used to play, and especially the West Bromwich Albion ones. I'd have to write it down, and I wrote it down, and because you get some players that say, "Oh, that's racist. That was racist. That was racist." I said that wasn't really racist. No, you don't know, and it's not their fault. They don't know true racism coming from the terraces. So that's when I said to them, you need to go back and look at some of these videos and understand what the situation was. So they'd go, you know, black and white kids would do that, and they'd come in the next day. Oh, Mr. Dennis, I watched it last night with my mum and dad, and we were shocked, and blah, 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 blah. You know, so they didn't really realize, and it's not until they did that. And I mean, sometimes you have to give them a sharp shock for them to understand what it was really like for certain players back in the day, what they had to put up with, and it's not just sort of racism, it's like a homophobic thing as well. Going back to Justin Fashanu, he got it as well, and so it goes sort of hand in hand with a lot of cases. But going back to what you were saying, the younger kids, they realise that there is, you know, that it still goes on, but what happens is that people have it in their head, but they know if they're opening their mouth now, which I find hilarious, and I can see it. I go to some games and I look at certain fans, and you can see what they're thinking. They want to say something, but if they do, they're out. And I just find it, and I think it's about time it's come to that now, that they just have to keep their mouth shut. You know, they can say what they want to do at home; it's up to them, but they have to keep their mouth shut.
Ooh. I wouldn't say like mentoring, because like I've just started going back into, I've just gone back into coaching now, so obviously it's going to be a bit more prevalent in terms of mentoring players and guiding them through different experiences that I've had, more so than when I was playing. Really, when you're playing, you're a bit more in the zone and focused on sort of like, I know it's a team game, but yourself individually and how you can make yourself better in terms of training, etc., and how you carry yourself, stuff like that. And obviously, if you've got other black players there, you know, you don't really talk about those sort of in-depth questions. As I said, football, because obviously from being in a football background, I'm not sure about other sports, but I'm assuming that it must be the same, especially in team games, that you're very much of laughy, jokey sort of situations until you either get on the pitch, and then it's concentrate on what you've got to do in the games and so on and so forth. So in terms of having that mentoring sort of thing, I never really had that, or maybe because of the era that I grew up in and the teams that I played in, maybe. But as I said, it's a bit more prevalent now. Being a coach, you try to guide young players, not necessarily whether they're black or not, just players in general. Obviously, with black players coming through now, I think it's a little bit easier in terms of the things that they have to go through. Obviously, when I was growing up, you had a lot of racism, and I had loads of things that happened to me on and off the pitch due to colour, whether it be walking to school and being abused, me and my sister, or things thrown at us. Even the estate that I grew up in Streatham, we were probably the second black family in that whole estate, and I had to fight every day to get out of my house, just to go to the shops or to go out and play, you know, and then fight to come back in again. And then same with sort of caring games. And I think it made me a little bit angry when I was younger. I reacted in probably not the best of ways, probably because of the anger towards people and the way that they would treat you and speak to you. But as I got older, those sort of simmered away and obviously become a bit more settled, and the understandings of how you are as a person. And yeah, it's a building block. It's a building thing. But obviously, if we've got black players in our team now, I'm at Cray Valley, PM. We have obviously a few black players there. If ever they came to me and asked me different things, whether to do with race or, you know, someone said something, what have you, then obviously I could tell them maybe not to react in the way that I used to. So yeah, so, as I said, I would treat most people exactly the same. Not really a race kind of thing, really. I know it was a bit of a long-winded answer, but hopefully you can sort of get the gist of where I'm trying to.
Yeah, definitely. It's quite funny because when I look at it, Eddie Akamara was my kind of mentor at my time at Sutton. So I think it's something that happens quite naturally. And then when I got a little bit older and at the likes of Dagenham and Barnet, there's just a natural kind of feeling to try and help the young black players, because I guess they look like me and they are similar to. Yeah, I think it's definitely something that just becomes naturally, because let's say Eddie Akamara kind of mentored me when I came through as a kid at Sutton, and then as I went forward, it's just something that happens. I think in football, the senior footballers, if you're a good youngster, the senior footballers kind of look after you anyway, whether you're black or white. I think it doesn't really matter. But in terms of being a young black man, I think you look for your own. Some people that look like you, basically, to able to support, and that's what happened to me. So I think as I got older, it was something that I did with all the youngsters coming through quite naturally, because that's the experience that I received, and you can't just give back as you go along.
I haven't necessarily had a specific assigned person or anything like that to sort of help guide or anything, but I mean, we cross paths with the youth team here and there, so I guess I'm in a position where I've been at the club for a while, and I can obviously speak to the younger players about things like this if the opportunity did come about. But I would just advise, obviously you're going to come up against difficult people throughout your career, and being of a different color, race, religion, anything like that is there's always going to be some sort of diversity issues within society these days. So I guess just being able to deal with the situation as it happens, and obviously you're in a position where you can't sort of react the way you necessarily would like to react, but it's probably best to just stay calm in the situation if something did arise, and deal with it from there, i.e. reporting issues or any derogatory terms or anything like that, reporting it to the relevant people. And yeah, that's probably the best way to go about things. I'm not so much it happens nowadays in terms of like teams being picked on race and contracts being offered out because of race and things like that. I'm not too sure it happens so much anymore, but I know back in the day it probably did play a big factor. So kids of today and the younger generation of today probably don't necessarily have to worry about that side of things as much as what they probably did back in the day. But I would just say, just concentrate on yourself, and don't put yourself in a vulnerable situation where you're going to put your career and your life in jeopardy.
But how do you think football could be more inclusive and promote inclusivity and diversity?
I think we've come along really well now. I mean, we've got the ladies' football mixed up now with the men's football. You know, it's very rare now that you'd see a male game going on without the commentators being at least one or two females. You know, we had the referee the other day refereeing the game, the England against, who was it the other day? Australia, the friendly game, and she was brilliant. So, you know, you're going to get other girls at home now watching that. They're going to say, oh, I can do that now. You know, that's what I should be doing. We've had, at my last school, we had so many girls who had gone on to start playing football. We had two girls who went to pro clubs to do their academy, to play in the academy. So that's good. Going from a race side, we've had a lot more Asian and Indian boys taking part in football, whereas before, back in the day when I first started teaching, you'd get predominantly Indian and Asian lads playing cricket or tennis. they wouldn't want to play football for some reason. And I'd see them in the playground. I said, why don't you go to the football team? No, I don't want to. Or, my dad doesn't want me to. Now it's just completely mixed, which is brilliant because they're seeing people on the TV that represent themselves. Like going back to what I said earlier with Civil Regis, I saw a black guy playing football, Laurie Cunningham, Remy Moses, Brendan Batson. I saw all of these guys, Vince Hilaire. I had a funny story about Vince Hilaire, which I'll tell you in a minute. I saw all of these guys playing football, and I was like, hang on, I could be playing football. Obviously not as good as Vince Hilaire, but I could be playing football as well. Nothing to stop me from playing, even though there was a lot of racism going on there. But nothing was going to stop me from playing. So the kids these days, they've got a lot more role models who they can look up to and say this, that, the other. If she can do it, I can do it. If he can do it, I can do it. And if she's from my race and she's doing well, then that's good. So I think there's a lot more. There are a lot more role models now for the younger kids, which I think is brilliant. I think it's really good. I think within the next 5 years, the manageress of the England men's team could be a woman. I think Emma Hayes could be one of the first to referee a Premiership team because she's had so much success at Chelsea, hasn't she? She's really good. Or also the lady, I can't remember her name now, the English manager at the moment, I can't remember her name, but she could as well because she's done so well. And I don't know anyone who's going to say she doesn't qualify. Lots of people say there is a big difference between the male game and the female game, which is true. Physically there is, but mindset wise, maybe there isn't so much different. Than organisation, maybe there isn't so much different. But obviously, physicality you can't compare the two. But I think there will be that change. That's good. If you look back 5 years ago, would we be at this point now? No, I don't think so. People would say no. I don't think that's going to happen. But look at what's happened now. It's crazy. We've sort of changed from a lot of the commentators who were on there before. They've been sort of phased out now, and you've got Ian Wright who's gone over to both sides, sort of thing. You've got Dion Dublin. Who else? You've got a couple of others who have gone over as well. But the sort of older school haven't really done that change, have they? They didn't really go on to that change, which is a shame because it would have been good to see Mark Lawrence and that commentating on the ladies' game. That would have been good.
Oh wow! When that question there sort of makes me think of, or the first thing that comes to mind straight away when you ask that question is Lewis Hamilton. Now, the reason why I say that is his mantra is always when he gets questions like this is always, we've got to be more diverse, we've got to be more inclusive. How do you do that? By getting more people on boards higher up who can change things, who understand and that are willing to do so. And then people who are sort of on the ground really, having more information, asking questions like how you're asking me questions now, asking questions and seeing what the answers are, having a discussion. All of these different things are multi-layered things that we do, and I think people are scared to ask questions now because they might be reprimanded for it, not because they're ignorant. It might be because they're interested to actually know, and maybe they might be able to change different things, whether it's from business, as you say, from sports. I think sports a good platform because obviously a lot of people look at it and they learn a lot of things through it and they take things away from it. So football in general, I think, has come a long way, as I said, from, early stages, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, what have you, to where we are now. Obviously, it's still not far enough. But I think dialogue and education is the key.
Obviously, I'm a young black man that grew up in Sutton. Carl Short and Sutton. So over the years, the NF, the BNP, racism was rife. And the one thing that made that, and I was different. So I was one of like 2 black kids in my primary school. And then when we went to secondary school in my year, I was probably one of 3 or 4. So maximum. So we was different. We looked different. We knew we was different. We were told it was different on a regular basis. But the one thing that created us equals was football. So kicking about in the park, I was on my own for a little while, and then one day a coach just says, "Come and join in." And I joined in, and from that day forward, football was my way to engage with the community and become the same as everyone else. It took a little while to break in, but as you do when you're new to something and everyone doesn't really know or understand, it takes a little while. And in the end, no one looks at. I found in my football, in my local area, that when it came to football, I was just like everyone else. It was the one thing where I fitted in. So it's breaking that kind of barrier down, I think, in terms of being inclusive and having equality and understanding that I've just got different colour skin. We still bleed the same. We're still the same underneath. But it's just something you see straight away when you walk into a room. And it's unfortunate that it's looked at like that, but we can't change that. I can't change that. Can't change the colour of my skin. It is what it is. But what I would like to be is treated the same as everybody else. And as a kid, you don't really understand it too much because that's what life was for us. It wasn't that I could fight against it, because I couldn't fight against it because I'd be fighting every day with everyone around it. And because I think society accepted that racism was almost allowed, and it wasn't until I started to grow a little bit older, probably 13, 14, 15, that I started to realize I've got a voice. I can stand up for myself in a certain way, and I can tell people this is wrong, and I could stop moving with the people that didn't really understand that we're all the same. Whereas as a child, I had to move in with certain people in certain areas at certain times. But again, as I got a bit older, I was able to make my own decisions and recognise what's right and what is wrong. I remember playing a game up at Roundshaw, my probably last year of primary school, really, and just got a barrage of abuse, racial abuse from like behind one of the goals, like for the whole game, to the point where the school thought they had to throw my parents. But I didn't respond to it. I just got on and played the game. I think the teacher recognised that and was quite supportive after the game. Rang home. So by the time I'd actually got home, my mum kind of sat me down and said, "Look, I've had a call from the school today. I've heard this has happened." I was like, and I remember I just kind of brushed it off. I was like, "Yeah, it's just like it's almost like the norm. Like I don't react to it. I get it all the time. I'm playing football. I just want to play football. I don't want to get involved in all of this." And then she took me to Marks and Spencer and bought me a coat. So it was like, and Marks and Spencer's for us at the time was like, "Yeah, this is like a posh shop." And I'll never forget it. But that was probably when I started to recognise that this is not right. Really, because my mum's given me something that I've never had before, and she get like it's a reward. So at that point, I realised, this is something that is not right. It's serious. It's not what should be happening. But I had to get on with it and still had to continue. So I guess inclusivity, diversity, equality is something now I'm older that I really bang on about. I work with a group of 16 to 19-year-olds, some from less privileged backgrounds, and I really sit down. I really try to drive home that the opportunities that they've got in life. It's not easy. And you want people to be more inclusive. You want people to understand you. But to do that, you have to actually explain who you are. And sometimes you have to communicate, and you have to, if things are wrong, they're wrong. And you have now the environment to go and tell people when things are happening and they're wrong. I don't think I really had a voice when I was younger where I could or go to the right people, because it was just kind of brushed off. Or maybe I did have, but I didn't really understand it, or who to go to, or be brave enough to challenge behaviours. I think as I'm older, I can now challenge behaviours quite comfortably and articulate myself in a way where people can listen and understand. And it's just not like everyone thinks, like Black History Month, or why is it Black History Month? Like, why is it not something else? And I said, because you need to understand what is going on. So, like, life is different. Someone described it to me sometimes like you got 3 houses. One's slightly on fire, one's really burning, but they're all on fire. But you've got to really address the one that is really going up in that, and the fire engines or whatever might arrive, and they'll go and put the major one out first. Well, that's what it is at the moment. It's something that needs to be addressed, that needs to be hit hard, because people don't understand it, and I don't think it's explained. Black History Month at school, or Black History at school, which might have been in Black History Month, was Martin Luther King and a touch on Malcolm X. That's it. That was all we was taught in England about Black history. But there is a ton of history that is out there, but we just don't understand it or know about it. So, and that's because it's not driven, and it's not an agenda, and the TV doesn't show it, or Snapchat or Instagram or whatever it is right now. And I think it's just something that needs to be addressed. And I think everyone would understand it so much better. And it's just not people throwing a load of money at something and just promoting it for a month. It's just to bring an awareness of what did happen to Black people back in the day, what is still happening to this day, the struggles that we have to go through to succeed, and the difficulties just because of the color of our skin that we have to deal with every day. So definitely, it's something that I've grown to be inclusive, to show equality, and to be diverse, so that different people can come into our environments and make sure that they feel comfortable to be who they are.
I think as a whole, throughout the world, I think more needs to be done in regards to obviously racism within football and within sport, both from the governing bodies, the clubs, the FIFA, all these sort of big companies that earn all the big money in the millions to be able to put on the big competitions and all these sort of things here. So I think they need to sort of invest a lot of money and a lot of time, well, a lot more money and time into educating people from a much younger age, to be able to understand and move on from the past times of racism and things like that within football. And it's not just racism, it's obviously other things, but right at this present moment in time, it is quite rife. There's been a few occasions and instances that everyone sort of speaks about and knows about that have happened in the past. So I guess it's an education thing that would obviously be more suited for the younger generation to learn as they grow, to make sure that things in the future are much better for the next generation coming through.
The next question is more specific to you. How did your football journey begin, and who were your inspirations growing up?
Well, as an inspiration, as a person, or as people, probably my mum and dad, for what they had to go through. So, I mean, I don't know where I would have been now, because my dad had the opportunity to go to America or Canada or UK, and he sat down with my mum and said, "Okay, UK." But when I came, I'm born and bred in London, but as I was growing up, teachers-wise, it's probably my chemistry teacher, believe it or not, Miss Rob. She was the only Black teacher in our secondary school, and she used to not pick on me, but always be pushing me on. And it wasn't until I left that I thought, oh, she was actually encouraging me to do really well, because there were like four of us in 1 year, four Black kids in 1 year in my secondary school in year 7 in Southeast London, so you can imagine. And she was really pushing me. So she was an influence, and just some friends who I grew up with as well. We had a reunion just last week, guys I used to go to school with, and it's really interesting. Black kids, white kids, we're all in our late 50s now. Asian, Asian, Oriental kids just meeting up, guys now meeting up together. Some of them are granddads now, and they're just all meeting together, and no one's looking to say, oh yeah, you're white, you're black, you're mixed race, you're Indian, you're Asian or whatever. No one says anything. But the thing is, we've still got that banter between us, but it isn't. I mean, people used to say things that were quite nasty and cover it up as banter. When we were in the changing room, the funny thing that we used to say, we used to have a lot of banter, and it used to be quite near the knuckle, but everyone could give it back. Like I'd get banter, but I'd give it back. But when you left the changing room and you go into the bar, it would be a different person. Like you get someone would absolutely slaughter you for your shoes or something. But when you go into the bar, it's different. People wouldn't say anything. Now I think people are a little bit more nastier with social media, and they hide behind the keyboard and say things like that, which isn't really fair. But my people who inspired me, I tell you who inspired me as well, and I'm going to really embarrass him now. Steve Galloway. No, I know if he sees this, he's going to go, "Oh my God, somebody shut him up." But he inspired me a lot. If it wasn't for Steve, I wouldn't have gone to Dulwich Hamlet. If I hadn't gone to Dulwich Hamlet, I wouldn't have gone to Sutton. Some Sutton supporters would have been quite happy, I think. But then I wouldn't have ended up going to Sutton. And then if I hadn't gone to Sutton, I wouldn't have ended up going to Sweden. And all of those moves were through Steve. He got me from Bromley to Dulwich, from Dulwich to Sutton, because he told Barry to come and have a look. And then from Dulwich to Sutton, from Sutton to Sweden. And Macca as well, Paul McKinnon got me through that as well. So, their influences. I think a lot of the team who I played with during that time I was there, like 4 years, a lot of them, we had a good bond. So they were all influences, I think. Sometimes we had to get together as a team to support others in the team. And I think sometimes now when I look at a couple of teams, I go and watch them, they don't seem as if they've got that bond. Sometimes somebody would get hacked down, and I know the football looks a little bit more gentle now. It's faster, but there isn't that sort of, oomph in it when I watch certain teams play. And back in the day, if somebody got kicked, I know it shouldn't have happened, but it'd be like a melee. Everyone would just get involved, but it doesn't happen so much now, which is a bit of a shame, because that used to be quite enjoyable. But that doesn't happen as much now. And I look around some games and they don't seem as bonded as we used to be before. Back in that, I know a lot of teams always say that. Teams before my team would probably say that we weren't the same as them, but it's just something. But I think going back to what you're saying, people who influenced me, they were the main ones, my parents, and as I said, Civil Regis players who I used to watch, and players like Steve Galloway, who Steve went from not knowing a word of English, he couldn't speak very good English anyway, to go to Sweden and not know anyone at all when he went over there, and then learn the language. And Steve's still there. He's still there now, and he speaks very good Swedish. He's got grandchildren now. His son's half Swedish as well. So yeah, I take my hat off to Steve. But I wouldn't tell him that though.
When I was little, obviously I loved football from a young age. Well, I love sport in general from a young age. But being born in the 70s, on TV, it was Liverpool. I'm a Liverpool fan. So they were always on there, and I always looked at people like Ian Rush and stuff, just like the style of how they played football. And from that day, I always wanted to play football. Going through those years, I'd say probably John Barnes, because of being, one of the first, not the first black Liverpool player, but one of the first ones that, when you're at an age where you start to understand things and you go through things, and you see him having to go through similar sort of things that you went through. He was a major attributor to me wanting to play football. Someone like Ian Wright. I used to play for a team called Accra, which was based in South London in Brixton. Ian Wright and Mark Bright went through that similar pathway. They both came into it late, just like myself, played a lot of non-league. So I always wanted to sort of follow in their footsteps. When people used to say, "Oh no, too late, you've got to go through academy structures, etc., etc." I wasn't able to afford to go to places like that, or that never available to me. I always had to go get on a bus, 3 or 4 buses to get just to training for etc., and then get home from there. Because your parents are from the West Indies or the Caribbean, they're a bit more things into like education, or they're not really giving you that vehicle to travel to places where I think that's probably different now. It's a little bit different, obviously, with my kids. They have that available to them. So yeah, that was something that growing up, those were sort of the iconic ones that you'd see on a daily basis that I could sort of say, "Oh, there's someone that looks like me, been through similar sort of things like me. Maybe I can achieve what they've done by, getting to the pinnacle and becoming a professional." And luckily I was. And as I said, when I didn't really didn't take football seriously until I was about 16, 17, really. Went on a few pre-seasons with Kingstonians and Carshalton because I was living in Sutton at the time. And then luckily I went to one at Sutton, got into the reserve team there with Mickey Joyce, was joint manager there. And then broke into the first team, and that's when obviously I met Lennie, and obviously he guided me a little bit with things that I could do. My best friend, Enko Ikoku, played for Sutton. His brother, obviously Effin, went through that same sort of thing, starting at Sutton and then going on to be professional. So I had a lot of different things that I'd seen through history that I thought maybe I could follow that pathway. And as I said, luckily enough, I was able to do that.
It can be football inspirations. It can be football inspirations or outside football, whichever you want.
So my basically football kind of, when I moved to Carshalton, obviously I lived in London before. My parents decided, I think they had an option basically to go to a high rise in London. I think we would have ended up towards White City or Shepherd's Bush. We was in Fulham by Wandsworth. Or the options to move out to the suburbs. So, and as a kids, we used to call it the country because there was green grass and there's animals in like fields. So anytime I used to tell my family where we are, they're like, "What, you live in the country? Like you got animals in fields." But for me, it was probably a dream, really, because I basically had a park next to my house, and I spent as many days I probably could in the park with at the time it was like tennis ball. And that's basically kicking the ball against the fence as much as I could on my own, really, because didn't know anyone, didn't really fit in. And I did that religiously for long times. I'd just be over there on my own. And just a coach one day, just seen me kicking about there for ages on my own, and just asked me to come and join in a training session for Little League. Because in the park in the evenings, I'll come in and the Little League teams would train. And they play on a Saturday morning. And that was it, really. Came and said, "Can you train?" I was a churchgoer at the time, so I couldn't really do Saturdays. My mum wasn't having it at all. I begged. And in the end, they came round. The two coaches that I trained with came round to my house, knocked the door, spoke to my mum and said, "Look, we're moving to Sunday football. I think it's under 11s at Malden Vale. Is where they was going." And they said, "Look, could he be able to join the team?" So obviously, like money, it was going to cost like buy football boots and buy the kit and join, and it's a bit of money. So mum and dad had to sit down and kind of have a conversation. I was desperate to play. I trained. I just wanted to play. And in the end, they said yes, and they kind of became my extended family. I walked down to Jeff's house. It was Jeff and Kim like manager, husband and wife. Used to manage a team, and a guy called Steve as well. So I just walked down to Jeff's house. He'd take me to football. He'd bring me back from football. My mum works. My dad was working. So it was almost like the community. It was like community. So that extended community looked after me, pretty much. And that's where it started. I went to Malden Vale. Club then folded, I think, or something happened. And then we moved across to Wallet and Wanderers and started playing at Hannibal Way. Done school football. So went to Greenshaw afterwards. So I was playing school football. Doing Sunday morning football, as much football as I could do, I did. But my role model was John Barnes, and it was crazy because again, he looks like me, so you just gravitate to it, don't you, as a human being? And then the kids in the area started calling me Barnesy, so I got like Johnny Barnes, and obviously I'm Jonathan, so John. So I used to love that. Again, it's a way to fit. It's a way to be accepted. Little Johnny Barnes is here. I could join in, and the old kids let me play eventually in the field as well. And then it went from there. Constant battle with my parents around football. Like obviously, my dad is part of Windrush, so he's got all the stories to tell of what happened. But he's kind of mindset was, you're here to study, you're here to get an education, you're here to get a life, is why we're here in England, and I need you to do that basically, because you need to set yourself up for life, because we don't have much. Like there's no, people talk about generational wealth or that kind of stuff. There's none of that. So there's no one passing away and you're getting money coming down the lines or anything like that. You literally, whatever you earn is what you are going to have in life. So I used to bang. It was a constant battle. I wanted to do sport, whether it's cricket, basketball, athletics, football. I was desperate to do that. I used to watch, didn't have a TV back in the day early on, but as I started to get a bit older, I used to watch Match of the Day, the FA Cup. I was like, I want to do that. I sit there, and then I remember talking to my cousin about it one day. And like, you're never gonna play football. Stop, don't be so stupid. Like, study. I'm like, none of you are listening to me. No one's actually listening to me. I want to do sport. I want to play football. It's what I'm good at. It's like, no, study. So that battle went on for a while, probably from secondary school, and then it was, do I do A levels? Do I go into studies? And then I decided to go and study computing. I kind of liked it at school, and I wanted to become a MCSE engineer or a Cisco, so networking or working for Microsoft was kind of what I wanted to do. So I tried to tell my parents I want to do an apprenticeship in it, but I got told no, you are going to study. Went off to Merton College in the end, but it was going backwards and forth. I didn't want to, so I wasn't going to do well at it. I wanted to do well at sports, but in the end, I just had to concede, and the battle was constantly going. Obviously, played for Sutton as a kid as well. In my probably 15, 16, the last years. Then I just went back to playing with my friends at football, which is enjoyable for me. It kind of accepted that maybe football wasn't going to be a path, and started to study. So started studying IT, went off to university in Middlesex, started playing like Saturday football with my friends now. Old enough to decide not to go to church, and my parents kind of accept it. So I was playing Saturday, Sundays, and then Dunny in the reserves at Sutton said to me, like, why don't you come like pre-season? You pay to play football. You don't have to pay to play here. And you know, it was weird. That was probably the biggest thing that resonated. And before that, I was like, nah, I'm playing with my mates. I love it. Like, it's great. And we had a conversation one day, and that's what he said. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Like, I get to play at decent grounds. I'm paying to play on the Saturday and the Sunday, and I could do this for free. And that was one of the weirdest things that I was like, yeah, I don't really understand what I've been doing here. and so I decided to go pre-season, but up at Nonsuch Park, up and down those hills, was not something that I was ever going to enjoy. But I just decided to do it, and Dunny's the one that hooked me in, really. So I came in, done the reserves, and then was scoring freely in the start of the season. And then he come one day and said, like, Nurse, you're going to have to go to the first team. I'm like, nah, I feel like I don't want to. I came here to play football. I don't really. I've been to watch them over the years. I like just watching them. I'm like, I just want to play football. He's like, no, Nurse, you don't get it. Like, you can't stay with me. You have to go. I'm like, Phil, but if I go and sit on the bench and I don't play, I'm not going to enjoy it. I said, I want to play football. And then he said, he sat me down. He's saying, I think, because the truth is, I didn't really understand it all. I didn't really get it. I've gone from Sunday morning football to doing this, and all of a sudden, I could be playing for the first team, and it wasn't the fright of playing for the first team. It was the idea that I'm just going to sit on the bench and not play. I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. So I went in. Rainsy obviously spoke to me. I sat on the bench once. I think I sat on the bench twice. Then I knocked the door and said to John, and I remember Tony Raines looking at me. I've never forgotten this day. He's like thinking like, what are you thinking? Like, I remember a look that he gave. He was like, what have you got to walk through this door and say that you want to, like, you just want to play? But I don't think they understood me as a human being at the time. Again, you just met me, so I wouldn't expect it. I just wanted to play football. I had no real desire to make money. I had no real desire that it was. I just wanted to play football. And in the end, I went in. Toby Ginadu came in. I think he went up front for a short period, and then he went to centre back. And then after that, I went in and I played. So it always goes in phases for me. The first role models, the biggest role model was John Barnes, obviously, and wanting to be him. Then it became the two people that looked after Steve and Jeff that looked after me as a kid. John Dunn was massive, really, in my transition from grassroots football to semi-professional football. And then Rainsy giving me the chance to kind of play and making an environment where I generally didn't feel, I just felt the same. I felt the same as everyone else. I didn't ever think of race at the time at Sutton. When we was playing that team was my friends. Some of them we'd play goals or whatever with, and I was in. So at that point, Rainsy, it was a big thank you to Rainsy for like put me in, let me go. And then we had an unbelievable side. And then I went on to Stevenage after. So Graham Wesley becomes next. Jason Goodis, my captain. So again, meeting people like Jason, Barry Laker, and Mickey Warner. I think they all played for Sutton. I believe Jimmy Dack. Maybe not Mick, but Dacky, Barry Laker, definitely played. So I travelled with them every day. They looked after me. They mentored me through. They then kind of left. I went off to Dagenham. Then I'm dealing with, well, before that, we've got Stimo that comes in at Stevenage. Then I go off to, and I spend 5 years with Stilly. And then I kind of come to the end at Barnet with Martin Allen. So in my time, all these people have kind of been mentors and role models to a degree. You have some good managers along the way. You don't have, you get along with some, you don't get along with others, but they all instill certain principles and ethics and values that are really important. So I guess over the years, they've all been role models to me, and allowed me to be who I am and achieve and be successful. And I guess John Barnes was just the one that probably touched it. And I never really met him in my life, but the others I've met along the way, and they've really helped me to get where I wanted to be. So yeah, I thought I'm missing a few probably, but yeah. Ed, I better mention Ed, because if I don't mention Ed and he sees it, I'm going to get nothing but grief. So yeah, Eddie Akamara as well, Ed, there you are.
So my football journey began really when I was about 6 or 7. I was originally a goalkeeper, which I enjoyed doing, but because I suffered from a skin condition that on my hands at the time when I was growing up, I had a sort of a bad skin condition. I couldn't wear the gloves, which was really the only reason why I come out onto the pitch to play. And I started playing for a team called Croydon FC. That was my local team. It was just a Sunday team. And I just sort of grew into an outfield player probably from about 7 to age 9, 10. I started as a midfielder, and then when I got to about 12, 13, I started getting quite a bit taller. So I obviously got pushed to the back as one of the defenders, and I've been a defender ever since then, really. But one of my inspirations, really, I'd probably say football wise, obviously your Rio Ferdinands and like your John Terry's as a defender and players like that. But growing up, probably the player that I loved watching, and my mum would always lose her head with me because I used to tape over her cassettes watching the Premiership on ITV, and I used to just record it just so I could watch Thierry Henry just on repeat. So yeah, that's probably my sort of biggest influence really, is just watching football. Obviously my parents were very supportive, mainly my mum, and yeah, just growing into a better player as I grew up. I sort of got to an age where it was something that I wanted to further do after schooling, which I had the opportunity to do, and then luckily I've had that opportunity ever since to play full-time football from the age of 16 till I'm 29 now. So it's been a fair few years, but I wouldn't change it for anything.
Were there any challenges that you faced in your career due to your ethnicity, and how did you overcome them?
I think it was strange when I first went to Sutton, and we were in the old Isthmian League, and that was basically within the M25, a couple of teams outside the M25. So you didn't really get any racism, really, to be honest. But in the 80s, mid 80s, going up to the end of the 80s, you'd get more, not the Midlands, you'd get maybe the coastal places. The team begins with the letter Y, came to mind. I don't want to say anymore. But the funny thing about that team was, at the time, I can't remember, the manager was, can I say his name? Jerry Gow. And I'm not saying he was behind it all, but when he left, they had Tony Jennings. Tony Jennings was at Wilston, and they were known at the time. They had a lot of black players. The team were made up about 7 or 8 black players, and I always used to go, "Wow, that's a team." They were just completely, and at that time, that was quite unusual to have so many black players, a good mixture of black players. So when he took over, I can remember going into training, and I think Barry pulled me to one side and he said, do you know who the new Yeovil manager is? And I said, no. He said, Tony Jennings. I said, what? So he said, it's going to be interesting, isn't it, when we go up there in a few weeks to play them. So apparently he went onto the pitch and he got the mic and he said about the racism thing, because it was quite bad there at the time. And he said that if he catches anyone or somebody hears somebody, they're banned. So when we went up there to play, it was just a completely different crowd. And I did have a gig. I was laughing. It was me and Edgar, and we were having a good old laugh about it. We found it hilarious how they completely changed, because a lot of their heroes now were the black players, and whereas previously a few months ago that wasn't the case, But I can't think of anything that held me back personally, but I wasn't. I mean, Sutton, we were non-league there at the time, even though we were at the top of the non-league, but nothing really held me back. I'd be lying if I said, I was held back because of this, I was held back because of that. No, nothing held me back. But just the race side, from that part of it, I found quite funny where that particular team had to change. And there are a few other, northern-based teams who seem to have that mindset of when you travelled up there. It wasn't all of them, but there were maybe two others who used to be very vocal. But when they came down to us, they were like mice. They wouldn't open their mouth. But up there, they just suddenly thought. But we still used to beat them up there, and I used to love scoring, especially at a team beginning with the letter F, ending with Y. Can I say the name? Frickley. I used to love beating them because their supporters were a nightmare. And that used to make me laugh, and Runcorn as well. But apart from that, the other teams were brilliant. Northwich was another one. Yeah, that's another one. Yeah, but apart from them, they were great. But then we go past them and we go up to somewhere like Gateshead, which is right at the top, and they were lovely. Their support was brilliant. So I don't know. I think there was something going on in the water at the other places, but I'm not saying that all the people from there were like that. But I could tell you a story if I got time. I won't rabble on. Myself and Edgar Waratifu, we played Boston when they were in our league. They were just at the road for Russian Diamonds, weren't they, at the time? And I think we'd beaten them in one game, and we were walking across the pitch, going to the bar. So their groundsman, he must have been about 90. He could just about walk across the pitch to do it. He came up to us and he said, "Oh, it's good to see you boys doing well now." And Edgar looked at me and he went, "Oh yeah, we're about fourth now because we had a good year." And he said, "No, I mean you boys." And I looked at Edgar and I was like, "What's he talking about?" And then the penny dropped with me and I was like, "Oh God." And I looked at Edgar and Edgar went, because Edgar had a bit of a short fuse. And he said, "What do you mean us boys?" And he said, you darkies. And I just looked at the guy and I went, "What?" And he said, "Yeah, it's good to see you darkies doing well." And Edgar was just about to explode. I said, "Let's go." I said, "That's not really the correct term, is it?" And he just looked, he's just oblivious, totally oblivious to what he did. In fact, he must have thought he was being polite by saying that, And I walked off, and in the end, me and Edgar just had a laugh about it. We couldn't believe that this guy was so ignorant, yet he thought he was being polite. Shocking, absolutely. But I can laugh about it now, but at the time, me and Edgar, we were shocked. We were just absolutely speechless that this guy thought that he was being polite. But in certain areas of the country, I found at that time, he just had a different mindset, completely different mindset to how people thought about things. It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. Now it's well, it should be better now. You're talking almost 40 years ago, like 35 odd years ago. But it was shocking. It was shocking at the time. It'd be interesting if I could track down Edgar to see what his opinions were as well, if he could remember the situation. But it was crazy.
I think probably the only sort of thing is that sometimes you get put into a box of where people don't know the background or don't know what you're having to do to get to places, or you might turn up late, or you might have, as I said, I went through quite a few challenging things with like abuse, etc. They might not see that side of it, so you might turn up a bit angry, or and as I said, I was very angry through my early teens, just through some of the things like that. So they might think that you've got a chip on your shoulder, would be one of the things, or that he's very aloof, or he's not very approachable, all of these different things, and without actually asking you questions, as I said, that's one of the things that I think could probably benefit people coming through till now. So that would probably be the main thing that I can remember. And I just thought if someone was around, obviously I never had a father figure as back then either, so obviously that was a contributor to my growing up. If I maybe had that, or a little bit more guidance, or someone sort of delving in a little bit deeper, maybe things might have been I might have been a little bit less angry being a teenager. But that's what I can remember, really. That's the only sort of thing, really.
We went to, I don't know if you will ever remember this, we went to Kettering away. I don't know if the coach broke down or it was traffic. I think it was traffic to travel to Kettering. And it was probably my first away day as a senior footballer at Sutton. I think it was on the coach for 8. I think it was traffic we were stuck in for ages, and I think kickoff got delayed by an hour, and it went back and backwards and backwards. And then we got there, and we won 1-0, and I got the winning goal. But I remember scoring and just like racist abuse coming from like an area of the the ground, and I kind of walk past it and you see it. But to me, I looked at it and I've seen this a thousand. I've just seen it so many times. Just dust it off. Like it doesn't affect me. You're not going to affect me. I've just scored. You're going to lose 1-0, and we're going to go away 3 points, and we got it late and everything. So our job is done. That was my experience of like that level of football, and the start of what it really was for me, and kind of understanding what it was gonna be like. And it probably did affect me in a way that more than I probably realized, because I see it so clearly today, what happened, and I think those experiences kind of shape what comes next. But we came away from it, and I was surrounded by a team, like our team: Louis Gonzalez, Nicky Bailey, Paul Honey, Andy Igo was the goalkeeper, like Eddie Akimoa, the bowler. Like we had Bolty again. Bolty, you mentioned Bolty. Bolty at the beginning looked after me as well. But he was a real, probably more influential than at the beginning than I probably realised, if that makes sense. Because he did speak to me and look after me, and we had numerous conversations around. I think Sutton. I think the thing about Sutton was it was a family. You walked in the door, and I can still walk in the door today at Sutton and feel like it's my club. And that is a really weird thing to explain and understand. And I've been away from Sutton for so many years, and I only spent a year effectively in the first team. I spent obviously a couple of years as kids, but even the group that I look at the other day, Lee Rogers out of nowhere, get message Lee, John, can you help me? It's like I've never been away. And Steve Rogers was my manager, and Lee, I played with Lee in the junior club. Then I went into senior club, never saw them again, but they're still they're like family still. And I think Sutton, it's weird. It's so anybody that I've seen, they feel like I could see them how many years down the line, and it's still the same. I saw the chairman at a Met game. I was at the Met coaching, and the kids came in. And we played them in almost like your older kids and younger 23s, you could call it, in the Surrey Cup that we played. And it was just seeing Bruce, like it was like I've never been away, and they're like, John, come at any time, like come back to the club, you're more than welcome. Ex-players always allowed in, and I genuinely felt like it was my extended family, and always will be my extended family, and I could always walk back into Sutton. And yeah, it feels like home. I have to say that it's unique to the club. I think it's amazing, really. But I guess I grew up there. A big part of my life was spent in Sutton.
I wouldn't say I've experienced firsthand any issues or anything because of my ethnicity. There's been a game or two that I've played in where there's been some racism shouted from the crowd and supporters. There was one a couple of years ago when we played at Crawley away. There was a fan that shouted something to one of our players, and it was pretty hurtful at the time, obviously to him and to the rest of our team, because obviously we were supporting him at the time. But and then there was another one quite a few years back at Tranmere with a player that was with the club then. So I've never really experienced anything firsthand. You always hear the odd, I wouldn't say bantery racism, but sometimes you have to nip things in the bud. And I'm sure that over the years there's been a few cases of that. But yeah, it's I haven't really nothing that I can speak on really.
If I was able to get all your Sutton United history and condense it down to a TikTok video, what would you want on there for Sutton United fans to remember you by?
Oh, one moment. Oh God, I'd love it to be two actually. What? Oh, you gone? Was it that boring? You would cut me off already. I think the time when I scored the goal at Aylesbury, because I think I spoke to Mark Frake, and he said that he remembers that when I went through, and it seemed like time just stood still. There was just me against the goalie, and the goalie just stood still. And I thought, oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to do. Am I going to take it round him? But the ball was slowing down, so I couldn't take it round him. Or should I just shoot? So I just shot at it. Luckily for me, it went in. But that, and also one thing that I always remember, and I was only on the pitch for about 12 minutes, was when we played at Peterborough in the FA Cup. I think it's the second round or something, or first round, the year before, when we went on to play Middlesbrough. And I think Joycey went down the wing and he beat about 4 players. He was weaving in and out and he crossed it. And I just had to head it in, basically. But I just got possessed and jumped up on the stand behind to all our supporters. So, yeah, they were probably the two best moments, or maybe the ones that the supporters would remember me for. I hope it wasn't for anything like missing open goals. A few of those over the years. But just enjoying it as well, and hopefully, you know, knowing that I try to give it my best and stuff like that.
Oh, jeez. Wow. Obviously, promotion was one. Probably another one would probably be a team photo with John Raines in it, because obviously he's no longer here. And he was massive for me. He was probably the best manager I ever had, you know, in terms of how he dealt with me, etc., etc. Yeah, massive for me. So probably the team photo of that. Probably debut goals. When I first started. God, that's going back some time ago now. Jeez. And maybe probably my last ever one. No, probably the one that took me over 100 goals. Would probably be the other one.
I'd like the first goal at Kettering. The goal at Kettering away was a highlight. 1-0. I probably felt that is the first time I recognised what it was like to score a winning goal. And like I used to get all the headlines: Nurse has the remedy, Nurse to the rescue, Night Nurse. It's like I've never again experienced that before. So like the nurse thing was something that being at Sutton really got highlighted. Definitely the big boiler suits that kept you warm, because I couldn't stand the cold. So I used to wrap myself up in those boiler suits. I used to love it, and I used to warm up in that until. So you definitely got to get me like in the boiler suit. Getting us on the coach, I think, and experience the journeys with us as a group would have been good as well. Like we were all quite young, and the camaraderie and the kind of togetherness that you'd see on the coach. Then you'd understand why we was so good on the football pitch together. There was like a whole culture that yeah, when you get on the coach with everyone, you'll only get to see it on the coach and understand like why these lot all get along and why they did so well. And then I guess the finale really would have been the Surrey Cup final at the Met Police against Woking, I think, which we lost 2-1 in the end. I'd gone from park football to semi-professional football at a good level. If that team had been together for just the season needed to go like another 10 games. If the season had 10 more games, we would have been up and we would have been gone. But unfortunately, we came second to Canvey Island, which basically won it by Christmas probably. But we beat them at Canvey. That was a real highlight as well. So I guess it would be walking into the big Sutton building with Rainsy there, and this kind of big club to me. Coming from grassroots football, definitely me in the big training boiler suits, trying to stay as warm as possible. Probably Rainsy telling me to get my footwear right, consistently, get rid of those blades. So my football boots are there with the longest rugby studs that you've ever seen, because he really got to me one day, and I just went to Modern Sports and just said, look, I want the longest studs that you've got in the football boot, because the manager is just killing me. No blades. I can't have blades. I can't have anything. I can't have anything fancy that I like. I've got to have these long rugby studs, and if I don't have it, I'm not playing. So begrudgingly, these long football studs that John Raines made me wear. And then just to get together, I think a big photo with the whole group together, I think it would really sum up my time if you could have that with a video, and then probably the great 6-2 at Carshalton, which I can't leave out. Those days were amazing. Those local derby days were great. So yeah, I think that's how I'd like to be remembered in a video, TikTok video.
So get promotion from the Conference South. That'd be probably the start of it. Coming back to the club after leaving and going to Cambridge, I come back to the club. Getting promoted to the National League. That was obviously a big thing, and then getting promoted to League Two. That was massive. Obviously for the club, being the first time in the club's history, that was obviously a big achievement. So I'd like to be remembered for that, being involved in that. And then obviously the Wembley Cup final. That's every kid's dream, really, playing at Wembley, and to do it at Sutton was probably an even bigger dream. I've been here for so long and played so many games. It was probably just a nice on the cake, really. But it's a shame we couldn't win.
If you could build your perfect player from the players that you played with at Sutton United, so you're going to be a bit of a Frankenstein. You're going to chop people up and take their left foot, right foot, shooting, passing, however you want to do it. Who is involved in your Frankenstein monster?
Okay, for the head, somebody who was just cool at all times and never let anything fluster him, and who used to give a lot of verbals and keep you calm on the pitch. This player said to me in the last minute of our game against Kingstonians, when we were going to win the league and go up to the conference, he was standing on the goalpost with one arm up against the goalpost, and he just turned around and he said to me, Lennie, how does it feel to be 1 minute away from winning the league? So that's Jon Raines. Yeah. So I think is it top half now? Yeah, top half. Somebody who's probably physique-wise, somebody who could run and run all day. It's got to be Paul Rogers. Somebody with a good right foot. There's only going to be one player, and it pains me to say, you know who I'm talking about now, don't you? The wizard winger. Do I have to say his name? Mickey Stevens, I suppose. Yeah, is he going to see this? He's not, is he? Oh, God. So, yeah, Mickey Stevens, left foot. My God, you really had a left foot. Edgar, probably Francis Owaratifi. Left foot. Left foot. Heading-wise, has to be, I can't put myself in there, can I? No. Has to be Mark Golly. Mark would run through a brick wall and head it, or Nigel. They'd have to fight over those two. I'm not going to get in the way of those two. And for humour, somebody who would keep the spirit going would have to, I have to nominate him twice. Would have to be Paul Rogers again. I've never met a funnier guy. I spoke to him a couple of months ago, actually, as Paul Rogers. Unbelievable. So, yeah, and somebody who was going to score all the goals, just get you loads and loads of. This pains me as well. Got to be Paul McKinnon, I suppose. I've got to put him in there somewhere, haven't I? But I did do a survey on his goals, and I think he scored 1 million, didn't he, or something? And most of those were penalties, I'm afraid, and free kicks. So I'm not sure they count. And also some of them were against the Sutton and Cheam under-10 scout group. So they don't count either. So no, that would be my Frankenstein player, yeah.
Oh, my goodness me. Very, very, very difficult. Because there's so many. I'd probably say Left foot of Nazim Makur, because I played with him. He was brilliant. He was Algerian French. He was the year that obviously we won the league. We formed quite a good partnership, and it was really good. So I'd probably say he'd be my left foot. I'd probably say Paul Harford, unbelievable midfielder. Again, played at Aldershot with him. Exceptional player, really, really gifted. Probably Andy Riley, just because of his passion and wanting to win. But not only that, he was also silky on the ball. He was good on the ball, really, really good on the ball. Probably the strength of Enko. I remember we played away at Aldershot again in that winning season, and he must have held off about 3 or 4 players for about a minute. It was incredible to see. So that I thought I was quite good at heading the ball, so probably my heading. What else is there? Right foot, left foot, heading. Yeah, that's probably about it. Maybe my pace when I was about 20, 18, 19, 20 might have been good as well. Yeah.
Right. Left foot, Danny Bolt. Without a shadow of a doubt. This guy's left foot is bonkers. Sorry, Chewy. I know you're behind Luis Gonzalez, that is, but and Ed, sorry, Ed. Your lucky days at Kingstonians, mate. So you're not going in. So definitely Bolty's left foot. I need Paul Honey's kind of physical body, because the Honey Monster, he was a machine in the middle of the park. Like when he hit tackles, you know that you'd been in the game. So I need him to be like the torso probably. Jon Nurse for speed. So Jon Nurse's kind of quick legs I got to go with. Nicky Bailey's right foot is what I'd have. So Bolty's left, Nicky's right, Honey's torso, Toby's head. Like, because he used to absolutely head everything that came into the box. The hands of Andy Iger. Obviously, he was the main man with his gloves. Probably Matty Fowler's eyes, because he's sharpshooter, goal machine in and around the box. So he can sniff out a goal absolutely anywhere. Matty, which is good to play with. I think that's it really. I'm gonna have to add Ed somewhere. So I probably need Ed's muscles, like he was slim, and we need Paul Honey's torso with his size. We need Eddie Akamoa's muscles. Hopefully that helps you, Ed.
I think leadership would definitely be Jamie Collins. He obviously led us players through a good period of time, and he was great to learn off of when I was a bit younger. I think I'm trying to think now. Past players.
You don't have to. It's totally your choice. It's just I thought it might be easier than picking someone who's in the team now, because you might be like, oh no, I don't want to hear that.
I think just setting an example and leading from playing on the pitch, and probably Craig Eastman. I think probably going back a few years now, when we got promoted from the Conference South, I think Dan Fitchett's season, probably I think he scored 30 goals that year, so probably his finishing. Can't think now. Yeah, no, I think that'll do me. I think
That's fine. I was just going to say, if you want to skip it, don't worry.
Yeah.
You made it through. Thank you very, very much. Just wanted to add a little piece at the end. Don't worry, it won't be long. You'll see why I don't do these piece to cameras very often. Wanted to give some thanks to Dave Farebrother for coming up with a suggestion and getting me the numbers of the players. I wanted to thank Lennie, Mark, John, and Lewis, and also Steve Calloway, who unfortunately the interview didn't record properly, so I wasn't able to use it, which is really frustrating because he had a lot of really good points, and I think it kind of really added to the whole narrative and story of the interviews. It was a slightly different style for me, asking the question and letting someone answer it. I'm used to doing a bit more conversation back and forth, so I'm not sure if that worked or not. I really hope I've done it justice. Didn't realise, I thought I was just had the camera on the interviewee and didn't realise it was me, so there was me nodding along, grinning because I was on mute the whole way through trying not to speak. So I apologise for that if it was distracting in any way, shape or form. It's very awkward for me, and I really wasn't sure about doing it at first, because the whole idea of picking someone to interview and talk to about things on the basis of the colour of their skin just goes against everything that I've ever known or done. I'm not going to turn around and lie and say I don't see colour, but I genuinely don't think I think of colour when I'm talking to people. I just literally will. This is what I want to talk about. But it was a bit awkward. However, I'm glad I've done it, and the questions I think were good, and they gave us some good answers. There were some quite depressing points that were brought up, and even more depressing was the footage from the weekend just gone, where at Gillingham a fan was giving Omar Bogle the monkey gestures on the sidelines, which did bring into some of the conversations that I had with people, comments of, I've been watching football since 9-10 years old, so it's like 40 years. Cyril Regis was one of my heroes growing up, and seeing him deal with that kind of stuff, monkey chants, bananas thrown on the pitch, and being told, oh, do you know what, just show them on the pitch, just show them, score a goal, that'll teach them. And it's still happening in 2023 is just insane. I don't know what the solution is. I kind of do think that the whole entire team's just go, no, I'm not having this, and walk off. But I understand why people don't want to do that, because it shows that they've lost, or it's got to them, and I can understand why people won't want to do that. There were bits of conversation that weren't recorded because they weren't part of the answer, but there were comments, one from Steve, which I kind of like couldn't believe, and that I'd forgotten, but it was things that were said at the time to him, that he was doing all right, but wait till the winter comes, because couldn't play in the cold because he's a black guy. And I mean, he kind of laughed it off, going, he loves the cold, but it was like, I do remember those comments, those type of comments. They weren't just this sort of lunatics on the fringe. They were mainstream. People used to just literally say that kind of thing quite openly. Lennie's conversation about someone giving him praise and being kind, and the horrendous language they used, you don't even have to think back with thinking of at the time that was rude. You can't say that kind of thing. Shouldn't even be thinking it, but the guy thought genuinely he was given a compliment. Mark's comment, how many times have you heard that young black guys have got an attitude problem? And it's just, again, one of those things that have seeped in. And as Mark said, he was angry all the time. People maybe thought he had an attitude problem, but it was because of the fights he had to have and what he had to deal with on his way to training. So he's like, is it just that it's a young black guy, therefore he's got an attitude problem? No, you've got to find out what's going on. And yeah, again, as I said, it's kind of like that. Yeah, I can see those conversations taking place and hearing those things. John, again, told me a story about his son being recently at a game and getting some abuse. And this one had a slightly, it shouldn't have happened, obviously, but this one had a slightly different thing, where the other players in the team was that the white players in the team saying, no, that's unacceptable, you can't be doing that. And they kind of stood up for their teammate. But again, that's happening nowadays. And Lewis just floored me and totally depressed me, and I've been thinking about this the last few days. His advice when mentoring, or he would be giving an advice and mentoring a young black guy to say, you're going to come across racism, not as a case of, oh, if it happens, it's when it happens, this is how you need to deal with it. And that just kind of, as I say, floored me to go, oh my God, these are the kind of things I don't need to think of. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it's made people think and want to explore more, because certainly I used to think Black History Month, yay, different food, let's try and taste it, let's see what goes on. But actually, as Steve said to me, Black History Month isn't for black guys, black girls, it's for everyone, because Steve said, I know my history, I don't need to be told my history. So do kind of take part in things, do listen to the videos, listen to the guys. Thank you for listening. Do let me know what you think, especially with the slightly different format. I'm not sure about it. And again, apologies for the nodding and smiling along, because I didn't realise I was on camera. Take care. See you soon. It's been a long slog, but thank you very much. This is Sutton Podcast in association with Lucky Star Gin, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
United! 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 United!